I have never heard of any law enforcement agency in the nation that prohibits its officers from even speaking to or interviewing individuals who are inside a house in which the officers are attempting to effect an arrest. From a law enforcement standpoint, what could be the possible benefit? The only purpose of an order such as this is to prevent officers from making arrests, which ICE leadership has allegedly stated is its goal.
So let me ask you about part of your testimony. You created a fact pattern by which you could be executing a search warrant, executing an arrest warrant, and you are forbidden by policy from interacting with certain categories of people that are on the scene. Did I hear that correctly? Surely I did not.
That's correct, sir. Actually, we did provide some internal documents to Chairman Smith. He had actually invited me during the last testimony to do that. He was concerned about protecting the identities of our agents that might come forward because of the fear of retaliation. These directives not only prevent the arrest of non-criminal aliens, but also prevent the identification and arrest of very dangerous criminals, potentially individuals involved in terrorist activities. Officers on the scene must have the ability to provide for their own safety. They should never be prohibited from talking to people at the scene, conducting interviews as needed, running appropriate background checks, or even making additional arrests.
Search warrants and whether or not you could interact with certain categories of people who are present at suspected crime scenes, or whether you were forbidden by policy from being able to do that.
Correct. If I can just actually I have some statements written down on a piece of paper here that came from some of those documents. And these are deputy associate directors. So they're at ICE headquarters, top of the food chain. If the aliens you encounter are not criminals, they will not be arrested. I am telling you to walk away from a non-criminal fugitive, or am I telling you to walk away from a criminal or non-criminal fugitive reinstatement? Yes. Why are you wasting your time talking to everyone else in the house? Only targets will be arrested. There will be no collateral arrests of any sort. So when our officers go into these houses, at least during some of these operations, they are being told, you will not talk to anyone in that house. You will get the target and you will get out. And as I said in my testimony, that's where we make some of our most significant arrests with regard to public safety. I can't tell you how many times we go in a house, even to get a non-criminal, and end up walking out with two serious bad guys, because in the past we really had prosecutorial discretion and we had the ability to do our jobs and question people and talk to people. And by doing so, like every other law enforcement in the agency or in the country can, we were able to identify far more serious bad guys than we could ever do just looking for simple targets.
There are 900,000 drunk drivers arrested in the United States a year, approximately, arrests. Would you agree with me or not if we decided, well, that's just so many people, we just can't get around to prosecuting all those drunk drivers. We're just going to use our discretion and prosecute only drunk drivers who kill people. Would that encourage drunk driving, or would it diminish the drunk driving in this country? You think that would have any factor on anybody else out there who wants to drive drunk?
I think that analogy only works if you take it to an extreme, and I don't think that is the case here.
I'm just asking about drunk drivers. Do you think that would encourage more drunk driving if we just gave them all a pass?
I think, listen, Mr. Poe, I was a career federal prosecutor. That's where I came.
I know your background, and I just want you to answer my question.
No,
I only got limited time, so don't just keep talking so that we don't get an answer. Do you think that would encourage? I mean, there are a lot of folks who like to drink and drive, and one reason they don't do it is because somebody might just arrest them and put them in jail. But if we told them, hey, you're not going to get arrested unless you kill somebody, that would encourage drunk driving in the United States.
I
Just
think
like it would encourage, if you gave a pass on these 20 conditions of people who are here illegally, you can stay if your wife is pregnant, for example. If we gave them a pass on all of that, that would encourage more people to come here and try to fit in one of these categories, so that if they got arrested, they would meet the discretion of your office and let them go. That's my problem with this memo. And I think it encourages the unlawful conduct, whether you want to call it criminal or civil. It encourages people to come here and stay here illegally.
And what disturbs me in the prosecutorial discretion, of course there's a million things that do, but particularly the term the person's criminal history, including arrests, prior convictions, or outstanding arrest warrants. All of you understand that just in that one little phrase there is one of the factors that could be utilized to use discretion. There are all kinds of scenarios. There's all kinds of room for abuse here, and you're talking to a guy who's a former judge. And Mr. Transom, my heart has gone out to you. I had, as a judge presiding over felonies, one case where a guy was in the courtroom and he had been indicted for a felony for driving while intoxicated. And when we get around to his case, turns out he had many DWIs or DUIs for some jurisdictions. But he finally got to me after he hit somebody. Thank God he didn't kill him. And because he had been in jail so many times for DWI and had never been removed, and because I'm supposed to consider safety of the public, it seemed like he needed to be in prison. The man couldn't stop himself from drinking and driving. So I sent him to prison, and it was a matter of months he was back in my courtroom for another felony DWI. And when I inquired through the interpreter how he got back so fast, he said he was taken to the Texas-Mexico border and ordered to walk across, and he did, and he waited around on the other side until those folks left, and then he went around the bridge and came back across immediately, came back to our county, and got drunk and drove again. Now, I'm really curious, who would ultimately, Mr. Crane, if you know anybody else you know, make the kind of call, gee, there's only 9 DWIs, so let's don't go after this guy yet. I sent the man to prison, and it was only after he went to prison that within, I think it was like 3 months, he said they came and got him out of prison, took him to the border and told him to walk across, and then he comes back later. Who makes those calls? Well, he's been in jail 9 times, but now he's in prison, so let's go get him out of prison so that he can come back to their county down the road. Who makes those calls? Anybody know?
Those calls are made within the office, generally by management officials. As officers, we really don't have that power, and it tends to be a roller coaster from week to week, month to month, as to whether or not we can actually apprehend them. I can tell you this, as officers, we've been screaming bloody murder about this for years. We want every one of those guys at least put into proceedings for deportation.
Thank you, Chairman. Director Morton, what input did the White House provide you in drafting the so-called prosecutorial discretion memos?
My principal interaction was with the Department of Homeland Security, so I did not have a regular interaction with the White House.
Did you have an irregular interaction?
No, but as I noted earlier, there was involvement by the White House in this. This is administration policy, and as such, obviously, there was coordination between the departments.
The memos would have been approved by the White House before you would have.
The White House reviewed the memos.
Who else did you talk to?
The usual folks at the Department of Homeland Security, the Secretary and her senior staff.
Any outside groups?
Me personally, no.
Do you have knowledge of anyone?
I
other than
don't.
you
This
personally?
was administration policy. This was developed by ICE, the
developed it?
Department of, what's that?
Who developed it?
I did with the Secretary and the White House.
Well, now I'm confused. So it was you, the White House, and the Secretary that developed this policy and drafted the memo. Who at the White House helped you draft the memo?
No. We drafted the memo, and as I indicated, this is administration policy. There was involvement by the Department of Homeland Security and the White House.
Were any outside groups, any immigrant right groups consulted?
Not to my knowledge.
Did you consult the special agents within ICE before you issued
This
the memo?
particular policy is largely focused on the enforcement and removal operations, but the answer to that question on individual special agents, no. Obviously, the leadership of Homeland Security investigations, yes.
These 20 factors that should be considered, were you directed by the President to issue these guidelines?
No, this was
Who told you to issue these guidelines?
well, this is issued by me,
So you
and
decided to issue these guidelines.
I did,
Did anyone in the
absolutely.
White House, they're not that the questions aren't that complicated. Did anyone in the White House direct you to issue these?
Again,
You
if your
decided.
question is, was the White House and the Department involved in the formulation of this memorandum, the answer is yes. Who issued it? I issued it.
Who from the White House was involved in this then?
I don't know all of the individuals who
You know
were
any of them?
involved. I do know the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs handled the principal policy.
Mr. Crane, were you here when Director Morton testified?
Yes, sir.
Were you given, as the White House was, an opportunity to provide input into these so-called prosecutorial discretion memos?
None, sir, whatsoever. We actually met with the agency the day before they released the memo, and they didn't even tell us it was coming out, so we heard about it from the news like everyone else.
Madam President, first, are you concerned about this? For 2 years now, it appears that the representative group for these officers have voted no confidence in your leadership. And to what extent have you confronted this question, met with them, examined the charges that have been made, and made a formal response to them? The ICE officers, that morale is very low, and that they believe the new standards calling on them to consider DREAM Act type issues in determining whether or not the person they've detained ought to be released or not, whether they've got a high school diploma, whether or not they might be a witness to a crime, that these are very confusing directives, and that makes it more difficult for them to act effectively to apprehend people here illegally. Now, see, you're very disdainful about that.
Not disdainful. I'm not disdainful.
I would just say that these are people on the front lines. You've not been out there having to deal with these arrests every day. And I say, from me, as a person who worked with federal agents for years, when you hear this kind of comment and votes of no confidence, I've never heard of that, you should be paying real attention to them, not rolling your eyes at them.
I'm not rolling my eyes. What I'm suggesting is that results matter. This is what we were going to do.
I'm told that ICE carried over from last year 19,000 removals, and they're counting them this year, and it's sort of a gimmick to making the removals look higher than they are. Are you aware of that?
Earlier, arrest numbers for serious offenders will fall well below the potential as ICE prohibitions on speaking to aliens or running criminal records checks in the field will prevent the identification and arrest of many of the most serious offenders.